Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of RecruitMilitary Live, a continuing series of live broadcasts covering all things military transition, veteran employment, mil-spouse employment, and much more. My name is Lucas Conley, a retired U.S. Army officer and former TAP program manager, here to share with you the ins and outs of navigating the turbulent waters of civilian employment. If you're in search of meaningful employment after military service, you are in the right place. Please visit rmvets.com/live to learn more. Okay, folks, let's roll. Have you been told by someone recently that you need to be networking as you transition out of service into a military career? Have you heard a couple of things about LinkedIn, but you don't really know where to start? Well, today's topic is building your network with LinkedIn. We're going to be delivering some heavy-hitting advice for taking your LinkedIn presence and your network to the next level. Advice that you probably won't hear anyplace else, so stay right here. Our guest today started his career doing public affairs and media relations in the United States Air Force. After 20 years in uniform, with assignments in both the U.S. and Europe, he retired and launched his civilian career, finding success as a publicist and as an author. He has written and published books about LinkedIn for learners, LinkedIn for small business owners, LinkedIn for college students, and of course, LinkedIn for military. He is the CEO of his own company, Sheer Communications, as well as serving as the president of the Military Transition Roundtable, leading a team that helps empower transitioning service members to use LinkedIn as a powerful tool to advance their lives and their careers. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Matt Sheer.
Hey, good morning, Lucas, from sunny San Antonio, Texas. It's only 60 degrees here today, which is a cold front. I'm happy to be here, and I look forward to working with you and helping military professionals in transition make the jump to their next life, but also to teach them how to empower themselves through LinkedIn.
Awesome. We're happy to have you here, Matt. In fact, in your honor, I busted out my dad's Air Force coffee mug, probably the last thing he has left from his time in service back in the 70s.
What did you do in the Air Force?
He was a what they call a ramp rat, security forces guy. 52nd
Gotcha.
Strategic Air Command, Spengalum. Cold
Good
War.
old Spengalum, yeah. My sister was the club manager in the early 80s there.
Boy, how the military and even the civilian world has changed since 1975.
Oh, yes, it has.
Okay. So, folks out there in LinkedIn land watching us live, now that you know who we are, we'd like to hear who you are. Hit us up in that chat window. Let us know who you are, who you're with, who you served with, what your status is. Are you active duty, transitioning, retired, National Guard, reserves, or some other status that we haven't heard of? If you've got questions, comments, issues, or just plain gripes, feel free to populate those in the chat, and time allowing, we will address them. Matt, excuse me, I'm a little congested today. LinkedIn is it seems like it's the only show in town when it comes to professional networking in the digital space. Yet so many of our service members don't hear about it, do anything with it, interact with it, or maybe even build a profile until they're right up against that retirement deadline. Why is it so important that transitioning service members and veterans need to learn about LinkedIn?
I think the first thing I would tell most people is if you know you got retirement or you're separating, at least 18 months out to build a network to do what I call information reconnaissance. In other words, maybe you were working as security forces, but now you want to take advantage of your education or the opportunities to do something else. What's it going to be like to work in that field? And who can mentor me and advise me on how to make that transition? Because it's not just throwing out a resume, it's building a relationship. So it's all about the relationship piece of it. So 18 months out, I'm working with some people right now that are like, one lady's a weather officer and she's like, I'm not sure if I want to do that or if I want to be a emergency management, but she's got the time to do that. And I'm helping her through the Military Transition Roundtable to get them the path towards finding more information about a specific field so that they can make informed choices.
All right. Well, as my grandmother used to say, it wasn't raining when Noah built the ark. So you probably should not be waiting until your ETS, EAOS, or retirement date to get started networking, especially when we consider, and correct me if I'm wrong, the vast majority of job offers that are tendered, employment opportunities that are taken advantage of, come from networking, not just blindly sending out applications.
So let me share a story. A couple years ago, when we started the military transition roundtable, there was a guy who was a colonel, right? Very successful, had a very great career. He was sending out resume after resume after resume after resume and not getting anywhere in terms of job interviews. I went through his profile. We changed it from that old classic resume speak, right,
Yep.
to a conversational tone. This is what I'd like to do next. Here's my skills. And then people can see from the skills, right, that they're a valid candidate, right?
Right.
And one of the things I'd like to talk about too is you've got an about section, which is really kind of 4 steps. 1, your mission statement. 2, what's your goal? 3, what's your call to action? And then the 4th thing, and I know we're going to talk about this in a second, is all the key skills that you had while you were in the military, and you put that at the bottom. So there are people out there that are staffing guys, and I don't want to say anything negative about them, but they like it their way and they don't want to work hard. But the truth of it is that you can put those key skills at the bottom of the about section, not only at the bottom of the about section, but also when you write your experience section, you can also put those key skills there. And it's kind of like a hunting dog, right? You know, the LinkedIn algorithm is like that dog. It starts sniffing for things. Okay. So if you say you've got a specific thing like a CNA or some kind of skill, and you got that or you use that skill while you're on active duty, right? Then if they see it in the about section and then in the experience section, it's going to get the algorithm really excited, and it'll go to someone like you or some of my friends in other parts of the staffing world. And this is what they'll alert them. Hey, this guy's got the skill, not only once, but twice. That seems like a really valid candidate for us. We should take a look at his profile.
Yeah, and absolutely. And if you think about it, folks like myself and the people that work for my company, we're looking for, on the behalf of the employers that work for us, we're looking for those quality candidates that have the skills. So if you're going to make it easier for us to find you, it could just be making it easier for you to find a job.
So much, so true. It's like my good friend Michael Brownfield, who's another one of our facilitators, is like, you know, you've got what I call 6 things in a bucket, and that's okay. But imagine that you write an interactive headline saying, "This is who I am. This is what I want to do." It's like going to the movies. So I went to the movies a couple weeks ago to see what's it, Killer of the, I can't think of the movie now, but you go to, let's use the military, Top Gun. You know, I see the previews for Top Gun. I want to see that because it's like, this is coming attraction. So your LinkedIn profile, especially your header, is like coming attractions. This is what Lucas Conway. There you go. And this is the mindset that I want people to think about when they're putting together their profile. It's to excite the person who's going to be the mentor or the recruiting specialist, because the recruiting specialist likes to think he's the only guy that does that. No offense, but if someone comes to you in your company in an internal and say, "Hey, this guy's got the skill, he's got these skills, he's working on this," that's kind of going to excite you to take a harder look at his capability. And that's what happened with the one colonel. Once he put that together and he had a headline with a banner, then people got excited about working with him to find him that job. So he got that job within about 2 weeks of his major change to his LinkedIn profile.
You know, it's interesting because I had a conversation with a gentleman retiring from the Coast Guard, an aviator, and he had, by all accounts, a pretty decent LinkedIn profile, and he asked me for some feedback. One of the things I told him was, your about section is not poorly written, but it's not also very interesting. Take that content and rewrite it as if you're down at the local Legion post and you're on your 3rd beer. Relaxed, engaging, passionate, and interesting. You use a different metaphor.
I look at it as like a storytelling kind of thing, okay? And what I like to do is I like to talk to people about, why did they pick this career field? What do they love about this job? Maybe what do they want to do next? And really tell a story in a way that's like, okay, I joined the Air Force to do this. I found that I was really good at it and I want to continue in this. Or I joined the Army in another case. I don't want to do this anymore, but I'd like to teach school, okay? How do I convey those talents and those goals within the context of your LinkedIn About section. And everyone that I've helped has reported back, for the most part, that this is the way to do it. It's not just like copy and paste your resume, and or better yet, when LinkedIn says, hey, would you like some help with this? And go, thank you so much, LinkedIn. I don't need your help. I'm going to tell my story in a way that's engaging. Yeah. If I had $100 for the word demonstrated history I've seen in military professionals' profiles, I would be really, really rich. If for just a period of 6 months, that word demonstrated history, because I look at a lot of LinkedIn profiles, and when I'm talking to people about LinkedIn profiles, if I saw that word, man, I'd be rich enough to take you on a major cruise around, you and your wife and my wife, and we'd have plenty of money for all the other activities that we could do on a cruise.
I think probably my favorite is seasoned professional. Every time I hear the word seasoned, I'm thinking like an old bay seasoning on my Cajun food.
Right.
Seasoned
Right.
professional
Yeah,
with 20 years of experience leading multifunctional teams. You just described every officer retiring from every branch of service in every country on the planet.
I've seen that too. That's number 2 on my hit list. Number 1 is, demonstrated history. What are you demonstrating? Why don't you come in and tell a story? This is what I did. This is why I love what I do. This is who I am. Here's how, my goal next is to find a job in this industry, or I'm going to take advantage of my wonderful, and let me say, wonderful educational benefits that are available to veterans today. Because when I retired in 1996, I said, I want to get my APR. And I went to the education office and go, what? You're going to do what? And I said, yeah, I got educational benefits. No, we can't do that. Now they have a highly functional program just for that professional designation, just like they do with PMPs and all the others critical skills that people are looking for. So the world has changed considerably.
All right, Matt. Well, we talked a little bit about the about section, and I completely hear what you're saying about storytelling. Within this very conversation, I said it wasn't raining when Noah built a boat. You don't have to be a student of the Bible to know what story I'm referring to. For most people in most contexts, but when you hear that, in an instant, you get the message.
Right.
Prepare now for what you know is coming.
Yes.
So I love that idea of drilling that down to a compelling story about the person. How do we then take something like that headline, largely the second or third thing that people see when they pull up your profile, the headline right under your photo?
Right.
How do we make that interesting and compelling?
I think it's a combination of 2 things. First of all, I want you to think of your LinkedIn headline like a news story. There's a classic photo of Harry Truman holding up, Dewey defeats Truman,
Yep.
And the headline is such that makes you want to read the story, right? What I also teach is that the banner on your LinkedIn profile plays a key role. It's like the billboard that people pass time after time after time. And so if your billboard is locked in, right, then there you go. See, that's an example of a billboard. Now, the billboards if we could go through those, if we could walk through this, if we can go to the next one, please. There's this actual ratio. Okay, there's a size. When I first started learning the actual size, which was about 6 years ago, Canva, who is a design element software I like, they didn't have this set, so I had to tell Canva I'm using 1584 by 396 pixels. But now you can just go LinkedIn banners and you can find the same thing. So that's the actual ratio. If I could get you to show the next slide real quick. This is the grid that my guy Bruce, who helped me design these profiles, he came up with his grid. And I love this because Bruce said, yeah, there's an element here that most people don't understand about their LinkedIn banner. So if you go to the next one, that's the red area. So, when I was a kid, I grew up in Decatur, Illinois. We used to play tennis ball in the streets because we were in a very busy street. And there's one little old lady that really got mad when the ball got hit into her yard. So we always said, if you hit it that way, you're out. So that's like Mrs. Grace's yard. You don't want to hit it there, right? Because she'll get upset with you and she may, call the cops. So the red area is out of bounds, right?
Right.
Now, let me show a couple examples how people think they've got it together and guess what? They really don't have it together. All right, this is a retired Major General Ed Thomas. This is a wonderful example. Someone's got a great desktop profile. Yeah, and his staff wasn't aware of the grid. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see that one of the words is missing. And I did write the general and say, hey, sir, I wrote him a nice letter and said, hey, sir, you're missing this. I'd be happy to talk to you about it. I never heard back from them. So
now,
that's a classic.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Two different views here. Computer.
That's I call this a desktop version.
Okay.
And this is the mobile version. This is the mobile. I took a
so
screenshot of. Yeah.
So what you're saying is you have to be cognizant of what your profile looks like, not just on your big screen computer, but also on the cell phone. Especially if you're going to go to career fairs, they may want to look you up right on the spot if they've got a connection.
Of course, and here's the interesting thing. According to some research, LinkedIn mobile side of things, it's 70% of first-time viewers visit you on your LinkedIn mobile. So that's why you've got to have an understanding of the grid and the red area there.
Okay, makes sense.
So here's an example. Yeah.
Go to the next one.
Here's an example of a person that has a title, right? And I love to put titles into banners, okay? Because the banner, and you'll see in just a second how the title works with the headline. But here's a good example where that white area is where that person's picture is going to be.
That makes sense. And you know what? I never thought of that. I never considered it. Never occurred to me until you mentioned it to me when we were talking earlier this week.
Okay. We can go to the next slide. Another example. Again, this has got a picture, but it's such that you can see that person is working in HR. Notice that, as we say in the old days of layout and journalism, it's flush right. So you want to have a flush right kind of graphic there.
Completely makes sense.
Okay. This is another example of a person where, in his case, see how he's got the headline and he's got the banner. And in this case, it really worked for Trent to be able to put a testimonial up there. Again, I have no set way of doing designs, but I think that's just a really brilliant way to kind of convey his billboard. So when we tested it on both the desktop and the mobile side of things, so you can say, oh, that does work. And then next one, please. Here's a good example of one of my clients, Brian Gwynn. See how he's got the title there on the left side, and he's got that technology kind of interface there. And it works to convey what you want people to know about him. Again, the headline below and the technology executive, they work well together, and it's kind of gets people interested in learning more. So you're talking about speaking sometimes. I tell a lot of people like Brian, when you speak somewhere and you've got your LinkedIn URL and they look, oh, okay, this is who I am, then it's okay. It looks like him. The headline is consistent with what he wants people to know about what he's doing, and the title ties it all together in a nice package.
Now let's talk for a minute, if we can, about these headlines. I've seen different templates. I've seen different designs. I've seen folks that just put their current job, what it is to do. Maybe they put in what they're looking for. How do you approach that challenge of creating a headline that captures somebody's attention and makes them want to continue to read?
Well, I've had 10 years of experience at doing that. I would say this in very simple terms. What is it about what you want to do? And then think of someone like Grandma Dankus. Do you have Grandma Dankus's slide there?
Oh, I've got Grandma Dankus. Let's see where she is here.
Okay. I think we're
There
there.
she
Okay.
is. She's a
So
sweetheart.
here is Grandma Dankus. Okay. So what I would tell you is you're going home for Thanksgiving, you're at a family reunion, and you have someone in your community that's like Grandma Dankus, and ask her if she understands what you're trying to say. Okay. Because military guys tend to like to talk like they're writing an official memorandum for record, that kind of stuff, or performance reports. Hey guys, if Grandma Dankus understands what you're saying, then you've got a really good profile. So headlines got to like draw the Grandma Dankuses in the world that want to read more. Grandma Dankus is going to love you and give you a cookie and pat you on the back and say, what a great thing. But if she's really like my grandmother or my favorite aunt, Annie Mill, and then she asks you some questions and say, I don't really get this, then you know you need some work. So it's got to be something that says, here's what I want to do next. And then it's like pulling you into the rest of the profile. And the profile should be such that people want to know more. And I have another pet peeve. We didn't really talk about the slides, but attribution. Most people say they're exceptional, things like this. They never, ever use attribution. Okay. And attribution comes in several ways. One, it's your awards and decorations. Another one is your performance reports. And you can pull those out of your out of those records and then transpose it according to Colonel Tom Smith. You know, Matt was an exceptional, community relations advisor, and he did this. Okay. That really conveys the talent. And the other thing I would tell you is we forget to use visuals on LinkedIn. And with a little thing called divots, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've got some amazing photos and visuals that you can use to tell your story. So all those things provide an attribution to your profile in such a way that people want to know more about you.
And I made it the same recommendation to the Coast Guard fellow that I was talking to the other day. I said,
Right.
look, you have the opportunity in the professional experience section, under each individual experience, there's a little button there that says add media. Most people ignore it. I ignored it for years. And then I tried it out. I did an interview with a retired senior military officer, and I wanted to kind of showcase that. So I added a screenshot of myself and the general. And I suddenly came to realize, just from an impression standpoint, and please weigh in on this if you agree, those images capture my attention much more than the block of text and draws it down to there and kind of makes me want to read it.
Exactly. So combination of, let's start with the banner. Then you've got some good visuals for your about section because you can add them there, but also in each of your job experiences, you can add photos. So back to my good friend Michael Brownfield, we worked together about a year and a half ago. In one part of his life, Michael deployed, 4,400 troops from Hawaii to Camp Polk. I want to say Camp Pokey, but you get what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. And how did they get there? And you can see the ships, you can see the deployments. Then you would say, God, that Michael is just a logistics expert, because not only did he have the visuals, but he also had the testimonial from his supervisor about how he and his team brought all those elements together.
Now, as far as the testimonials are concerned, is that something that could reside well within the recommendations section? And I think that's another section of the profile most people just ignore.
Okay, I've taken a hard look at recommendations. I love recommendations. However, they hide those things. If you look at a typical LinkedIn profile, the recommendations come at the bottom of that. Mm-hmm. And the real opportunity is to take some of the best of those recommendations for performance and put those into the experience section for the area where you were serving in that capacity.
Okay, so you'd recommend maybe a copy paste or a screenshot as a piece of media?
No, I would say according to, I'd say like according to such and such, he did this, right? It's taking that and kind of editing down so people can see that. I wish if I was the king of LinkedIn, I never will be, but if I was in charge of that, I would tell you, look at your put the recommendations higher up, especially for military performance guys. Military guys in transition, they need to really convey this story. And I have to say this, dealt with a lot of people through the military transition roundtable. I'm dealing with some people here in this new event and organization I'm working with. And it's like, oh, shucks, I did nothing. No, you didn't. You did some amazing things, and attribution from recommendations is great. If I could talk to the head of LinkedIn and say, look, moving the recommendations to the bottom of that, not a good look. Make it easier to find, because if you were to look at my profile, you would see it's at the bottom. You got to really, really dig for it. But when I coach people, I say, take those recommendations there and take those performance reports and those awards and decorations and put that into the context of your about section, and more importantly, in your experience section.
All right, you heard it here first, folks. That's a piece of advice I've never heard from anybody, any of these self-proclaimed, and there's plenty of experts out there. Sir, you've written more about this than I think I've ever read, so I'm going to label you an expert and let you hang on to that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I've never had anybody talk to me about pulling stuff from the recommendations up and front-loading it, and it just makes sense. You always front-load the things you want people to read about you.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm not sure how we can do this, but Michael Brownfield, Brownfiel, look at his experience at the 24th ID, and that would be something that I would tell people to look at. And I refer his profile to a lot of people, as well as some of the other people I've worked with, because the recommendation is telling you the first time viewer, this guy's got these kind of skills.
Awesome. And you know what we'll do is we'll drop his URL into the comments section immediately after the show, and anybody who needs to can go ahead and reference that. Before we start to wind down and start running out of time, I want to talk to you about something that's important. How many times I've heard people say you have to build your network. You have to build your network. You have to build your network. And a lot of folks, when I say this, and rightfully so, they just kind of look at you and go, yeah, I know, but I don't know how. Can you explain it to me? Could you break it down for the folks at home? How exactly do you go about building a network?
Okay. One of the things I think that military guys need to do is get outside their military comfort zone. That means joining a professional organization, PHR, the organizations like human resources professionals, public affairs, logistics. Go out and make an effort to go to those lunches and build a relationship, okay? Go to professional conferences, build a relationship. That's the first thing I would say. Yeah, we're all comfortable with our military buddies and all that, but it's important to build rapport with other people and to ask them. And more importantly, it's not like you're just asking them. They may ask you some questions. Maybe they've got a cousin or a relative that wants to join the Army or the Air Force. What's it like today? How do I do that? What do you know? So it's both a give and take of information that's given to each other. So professional organizations, tell you another place to go. Rotary International is a great place to go. There's Rotary clubs. I'm a member of the Knights of Columbus. And lastly, I am also the Chief of Public Affairs for the 20th District of the American Legion here in Texas. Join an American Legion post. Those are organizations where you see people outside the fence, or as we say, the wire, and you build relationships. And little by little, you build that relationship. And more importantly, when you meet someone, either at church or at a Rotary club or a professional organization, how do you reach out to those people and say, hey, I met you. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me. Is it possible we can get together either for a virtual cup of coffee or a real, meeting like lunch or something like that? It's important to build that. And it's important to not just be one way, but also looking at ways to help the other person as well.
So how about those LinkedIn connections? How do we get from zero to that, the golden ticket, the brass ring, the 500 plus number at the top of the profile?
Okay, so let me say this. First of all, have a profile with a picture. That's going to kill. If you don't have a profile with a picture, it's going to kill you. Number two, look at people and write an exceptional LinkedIn connection note. So what I tell people is, you only get 300 characters, but you can do a lot with those 300 characters. There's a tie back. So, for example, hi, Lucas. I saw, I'm reaching out to you because I'm interested in what you do. I've noticed you're ex-Army officer and then you work for RecruitMilitary. I'm hoping that we can connect. That's the first step, right? And then Lucas gets back to you in a couple of days and say, oh, great. Then you reach out and say, hey, thanks so much for connecting with me. Is it possible we could set up a time to really talk? Okay. And what I will tell you is I use Calendly, and I know you may use something else, but Calendly is a wonderful little tool, and it says, I'm available at these times. And you're being proactive. Hey, I'm available on these times, and perhaps there's a time that works for you. Okay. And then be flexible on that. And then the last thing I would say is invest in a CRM, a customer, like I use Pipedrive. There's about 25 variations of this, but build a CRM. And a lot of these are free up to a point, and then they go, oh, you've got 1,000 people. It's probably time to invest that $25 a month in a professional CRM. So a CRM, and that way you keep track of when you talk to these people, and you can look at the conversations you had with people in the past.
Absolutely. And you've got to take notes, and you've got to make a record of this, because if that relationship is important to you, the next time you talk to that person, you ask them the same stinking question you asked them 3 weeks ago, they're going to start to look at you and think that you're just not paying attention, or you don't value that individual's time. So put the effort in. Don't just think, oh, I'm going to go pump this fella for information about the semiconductor industry because I want a job. Give and take, just as you said. Matt, go ahead.
No, I was going to say one thing. I love the books by Harvey Mackay, the original books by Harvey Mackay, talking about finding things about the other person. And LinkedIn, if a guy's got a really robust LinkedIn profile, you're going to be able to find a lot of good information like that.
Find common ground. Join some of those LinkedIn groups, the vet networks, the U.S. Air Force retired networks. Reach out to folks that you know, or may know, or have common ground. You've served in the same places, you've worn the same uniform.
Exactly. That's the name of that game. I think my next book is going to talk just on the whole game of networking. I get a lot of what they call pods, these lovely Chinese girls that want to be my friend and all that, and I just ignore them.
I'm not convinced. I know that I'm not that handsome and interesting.
No, I know that. If you met my wife, she's going, what? Who did this? No, she would say, thank you. I'm happily married to him for 26 years. So yeah, it's like building a relationship. That's the biggest thing. Building a relationship is very important to building a LinkedIn network of 500, and be of value to the people in your network. It's not just taking information, but giving information as well. Excellent.
As we wind down the show, I'd like to close out with the same question I always ask, the last question I ask of all my my guests. Matt, if you had just a few brief moments with a transitioning service member, mil spouse, or veteran, was interested in growing their presence on LinkedIn, in growing their network, what one piece of advice would you leave them with?
Be open to new opportunities and get outside your comfort zone, and be honest and transparent with people. That's what I would say.
All right. Awesome. Matt, on behalf of Recruit Military and the folks that joined us today live, thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you, Lucas. It's been fun talking to you today.
And if the folks at home want to learn more about what you're doing to support transitioning service members, where should they go?
Two places. Got a website called the Military Transition Roundtable. It's a nonprofit formed over 3.5 years ago. We work with people in small groups. We help them overcome their fears and doubts about transition. And it's great to see people talk about their experiences in such a way that they help each other. So this group that I'm here with, the American GI Forum, typifies the kind of programs that I'm happy to be part of, because they're exchanging information to each other in such a way that it helps them overcome the barriers and shows them where the roadblocks might be and how to get around them.
Awesome. You heard it here, folks. Look for Matt Shearer on LinkedIn and other places as well. And if you haven't already done so, and you're a fool if you have not, go on over to recruitmilitary.com. That's www.recruitmilitary.com for access to over 400,000 job opportunities from 16,000 employers across the United States and around the globe. If you're looking for a meaningful career opportunity as you transition from military service, Recruit Military is here to help you find it. Well, that about wraps it up for us today. Join us right back here in 2 weeks on November 15th, when we will have the pleasure of hosting Zach Gillen from Cummins. That's right. The leading name in diesel automotive power generation and aviation power plants will be with us to tell you all about the myriad of career opportunities they have waiting for you, so don't miss it. This has been Lucas Conley for Recruit Military Live. Until next time, good luck and Godspeed.